Litify connections. This session will be about building questionnaires. So this is our first time doing this outside of our normal product onboarding. So really excited to be sharing this with all of you. So just to go over our agenda for today, right, we'll cover some brief introductions. We'll talk about what are questionnaires if you're not familiar with them. And then I will do a build walkthrough. Very basic because we only have an hour together, but it'll be fun. And then we'll cover some resources. If you do want to go on your own and begin building these questionnaires out, then you have a lot of resources for yourself. And then we'll end with some, if you have any questions, we'll do a little Q&A together, okay? So again, if you're not familiar, if you've never met me, my name is Chris Rivera. I'm a product enablement manager here at Litify. And what that means is it's just a fancy way of saying that I'm a trainer at Litify. So very nice to meet you all. I'm also joined by Juliet Verwan, our product manager here at Litify, and she's just going to kind of be helping me in the chat if you guys have any questions, or if she sees that you raise your hand. If you want to come off mute, feel free to do so. Normally Shaylee does that part, but she's on PTO, so definitely feel free to to raise your hand if you have any questions, or just drop it in the chat. Okay. All right, so with that being said, let's just jump right into it. So let's talk about what are questionnaires, right? Questionnaires are part of intakes, and it makes it very easy for the intake agents to document that first interaction with the client, right? So questionnaires are, in a way, kind of like a script for them. It's composed of different sections or nodes that contain questions. And with that, the intake agent can do, when they're talking with a prospective client, it's like going through these questions, right? Those sections, they use it as a guide for their conversation. So like this screen says, right, questionnaires contain questions organized in nodes or sections that intake specialists ask potential clients. So questionnaires are used to qualify intakes and determine if the case will be accepted, referred, or rejected, right, or turned down. Now, there are 3 basic steps to create your questionnaire, and that is planning out your questionnaire, right? You want to include all the component questions and navigation. You want to work all of that out before you begin jumping in to create your actual questionnaire, right? After that, you want to create your questions in Litify, right? What questions will the end user be asking the client? And then finally, of course, you want to create the actual questionnaire. So we're going to break these 3 basic steps down, starting with planning out the questionnaire. All right, so, the main point about questionnaires is that they are very customizable. So sometimes a questionnaire will look like this top example here. Let me just grab my annotation tool so we know what I'm pointing at. So sometimes they will look like this example right here. All right, this very linear example that I have here. So we have the case type might be automobile accident, right? So the first, after that, the first node will be incident details. So you're capturing, what's your name, what's your number, where did it happen, how did it happen? The second node or section will be the insurance details, right? The third will be, maybe any defendant or police information. But depending on that last node, that's going to determine your outcome of that questionnaire. So maybe for this simple example, the end result was that it was rejected, it was turned down. That's the end of the questionnaire. So you can see very simple, very easy flow there. But then you have another option. You have maybe some sort of complex questionnaire, and that's the below example. Let me just clear here. So we have a more complex questionnaire, right? So if you look right here below, we have the case type is a mass tort dangerous drug. We're capturing some drug and health details. But right here in section 2 or node 2, we're grabbing the prescribing doctor details. And what happens here is you can go 2 ways, right? If let's just say the medication, it was prescribed in our state, it's going to take you right over here to node 3. And maybe the outcome is, you qualified the questionnaire. However, if it's prescribed out of state, then maybe you go here to Note 4 and you grab some referral details and end up referring the case, right? So just to kind of point out, there are different ways for you to set up the questionnaire itself. It's very easy to do, but just so you understand, again, completely customizable, and they can be either linear or very complex, okay? All right. And again, feel free to stop me if I'm going too fast or you have any questions or want to see or want to hear something again. All right, moving on to creating your questions. Again, create questions. You want to add them to your questionnaires to streamline your intake process, right? Questions can be used on any questionnaire. And some examples might be, is the caller the client? Are you currently represented by another attorney for this matter? Were you injured in this accident, right? Those are just some examples. Keep in mind, planning out your questions in advance will help you avoid gaps, confusion, you know what I mean? Or even rework once you're building your questionnaire in Litify. You want to make sure that they're, that basically you understand the goal of each question. You want to map out all possible question and answer scenarios, making sure that you hone down that end-to-end flow, right? That it makes sense, and also that it makes sense for the end user when they're going through the questionnaire with the client over the phone, right? So what I'm going to do now is, because we're talking about creating questions, I'm going to jump into an org so I can take you what the, show you what that looks like. We'll create a couple questions together. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm in my org here. Now, in case if you aren't aware, there's a couple ways that you can access the questions component, right? So let me get my annotate tool here. So you can go ahead and click on the app launcher, right, which is this little waffle icon. I've heard some people say, these little dots here. So you can click on the app launcher and you can begin typing. So I'm going to start typing questions. So you can see as I start typing, it's showing up right here for me. So this is where I would want to go. But there's another way you can do that also. If you want to go to a specific app, which is Litify Setup. Now it's there at the top there, but if you wanted to just type it in, same deal, right? Litify Setup, I can start typing and I see it right here. The difference between the two is if I go to just questions, right? If I were to click on that, it's going to temporarily put that on my navigation bar right here, right? Just temporarily, because I clicked on it and I'm using it. But if I'm going to go ahead and just go the route of using the Litify Setup, you can see that my navigation bar is going to change with those tabs already there. So I don't have to have any temporary ones or add anything, right? It's all there for me. So Litify Setup is actually going to contain all the sections that we're going to talk about today, which are questions, questionnaire, case qualified criteria. So you can see it's very, very easy, and it's my favorite thing to use versus having to type in each one to navigate to. So Litify Setup if you're building questionnaires, okay? All right, so like I mentioned, we're going to go ahead and start with questions. All right, now, of course, I have recently viewed here, right, because I've been kind of testing and creating questions. So you can see that my recently viewed is full, but if you're just starting for the first time, it might be empty for you. But also with that being said, within this list view, you can actually go to all, right? And essentially, when you're building your questionnaire, chances are there could be, questions already created in Litify, right? So, that's something that'll help you along the way if you're just getting started. You can use the search list right here, to search. Maybe there's something that already exists, so you're not doing double the work, right? So that's just a little neat thing that Litify already has set up for you. Sorry, and if you hear my dog in the background, that's Odin. It's very active right now. But all right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on New, because that is how you would create your questions. I'm going to click on New here, and you have some sections that you want to fill in. So you have your question label, right? So just for example, I'm going to do caller's phone number. Okay. Right below that, you have legacy question ID, and that's, especially you're coming from another system and you're trying to help the end users understand, you can also plug in that information here. But otherwise, you're using question label and answer type right here. Okay, so I'm going to click on the drop down so we can take a look at the different answer type options that we have. Okay, so if you're not familiar with these, we have like string, which is a one-line text input box. You have select, which is, you're just going to select a few items that you have listed there. You have like Boolean, which is like a true or false. But specific, because we're talking about the phone number, right? That's the information I want to grab. I want to point out something here. You see how we have phone? What a lot of people I've seen do is they will select string, right? Because they want the end user to just be able to type in the phone number really quickly, right? But the thing about it is that there is already a field type called phone in Litify, in the intake, right? So we recommend for you to do that because it's going to be easy when you begin mapping this this information, right? And we'll get into field mapping in just a bit, but just so you understand, that it's already created for you, so there's no need to, make them do the extra work by having them type it in that way, right? They can just map the information once they've created that party and it already exists in Litify. So caller's phone number, I got that. I got my answer type. All I can do is save. Or if I'm creating multiple questions back to back to back, then I can just do save and new and continue entering my questions that way, right? And you can see I got my notification banner there, questions saved successfully. And then I would just go in and continue creating questions. Some other questions that I could create would be, and I'm just going to use as an example, is one that I mentioned earlier. Are you currently being represented by an attorney for this case or this matter? I would change my answer type to probably I would do select, and then I can just add in the responses here. So I would do yes, and then click add. I would do no, and then click add. So basically this is the choices that the end user will have when they're going through the questionnaire, right? They get to this question and they can either select yes or no, okay? So that's essentially how you would create a question and select different answers. Any questions about creating questions that you guys have? Definitely feel free to raise your hand or drop it in the chat. All right, taking that silence as a no, we got it, we're moving on. So as you can see, I've created already a bunch of different questions. I'm just gonna click into them so you can kind of see. So one of the questions I created was, what is your first name, right? I'm using a string there. We can go back and we can do, let's see, we also have caller's email, right? And we know, same, just like the phone, the email is already a field type, so we're just going to use that versus them having to type it in. And again, this is going to help for mapping. All right, so again, that was creating a question very quick. I can either, create them or maybe go through a list that, we might have already created in there. Okay. So now we have, let's talk about actually creating the questionnaire, right? Again, create questionnaires to gather information and store it in the appropriate place during the intake process on Litify. Now, a questionnaire is made up of 4 parts, essentially, right? It's nodes, which means like sections, mapping fields, right, or field mapping, case qualifying criteria, or CQC, we like to call it. And then, of course, navigation rules. So same deal, we're going to break this down, and then I'm going to go ahead and show you it live. I'm going to create one. Okay, so beginning with nodes, right? So nodes are, again, sets of questions in a questionnaire. When the end user clicks next on that questionnaire, it will navigate to the next node or section. You can add as many questions as necessary to each node and as many nodes as necessary to each questionnaire you build. An example right here, you can see there are 12 question nodes right here. And within each node, there are a set of questions, right? There are a set of navigation rules. There are a set, we're going to see this in just a moment. So that's essentially what nodes are. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to go ahead and navigate over to questionnaires, and I'm going to build one from scratch. So I'm clicking on questionnaires. I'm going to go ahead, and again, out of the box, there might be some kind of like dummy questionnaires that are already built out, just to kind of show you an example of what they're like, and you can see that by just clicking all. But I'm going to click new. Okay, so again, I've clicked, I'm in my questionnaires. First step here is I'm going to name my questionnaire, right? What is it called? What is this? So we'll just do, I'll just call this automobile accident. All right, right below there, you do have options to go ahead and make this questionnaire active, right? So that it's available for the end user to use, and also available. So meaning like, if you do active questionnaire, essentially you can make it a default questionnaire. So when the end user goes to their intake and they click on questionnaire, this automobile accident questionnaire will be there. But you can also do a pick list if you have like, maybe you have like 20 questionnaires, you want to make sure that it's available within that pick list for them to see. So you can check both of those, but this is something that you can come back to if you want, if you're still playing around with it and then you don't want to make it active, you can just leave it unchecked and then come back and update that afterwards. But I'm going to do that. And then go ahead, always save as your friend. Make sure you are saving your work because you don't want to lose it. All right, so I've named it, I've made it active and available. Now I'm going to go ahead, and I was talking about those nodes. I'm just going to click on the plus sign right here where it says question nodes. By default, it's going to name this node 1. So I'm going to click into node 1, and you can see now that I have some more options over here to the right, but I need to name, I like to name my nodes. So that's my first step. I want to name it. So to do that, I can click on the pencil, and I can just erase node 1. And whatever I want to call it. For this example, I'm just going to name this opening. Now, this, the top section, it's like when you're building it, you're labeling it so you know, okay, this is my opening node, this is my next of kin node, this is my, but underneath it, this will be whatever the end user will see. So typically, something simple, you can just, so they understand that, that this is the opening node, right? Nothing, but it's up to you. You can, put whatever you want, but just know that the second section here is what they will see, right, on the label. You'll update it, and then it'll show up just like this. And if you don't want it anymore, you can delete it by just clicking on the trash can. Okay, so I'm going to add a few more here, just to, again, to show you. I'm going to add a couple more. So I got my opening, I got my next of kin. I'm going to add accident here. Maybe we'll do some injuries. And keep in mind, this is just a basic questionnaire. Right. We will do, let's see, we'll do a closing. And I'll just add 3 more here just to make, so you understand, again, you can have multiple nodes. Something else to note about nodes is that you see how I'm entering it in this order. I can't reorganize them, unfortunately. So if you are building your nodes and then you realize, oh, I should have put schedule an investigator under, after next of kin, well, you can't reorganize them, okay? But that doesn't stop you from choosing how they navigate, right? So even if I have schedule an investigator down here, I can still make it so when the end user goes to opening, then the next node is schedule an investigator. I can still do that, and we'll see that in these sections to the right. But just so you understand, with organizing the nodes, the way you put it in, that's the way that they'll be in this view, I mean to say.
And Chris, we just got a question in the question and answer section.
Yeah.
They said, if the individual is represented, how would we use the Boolean field to end the questionnaire, if that's the case?
All right, and I'm sorry. So can you repeat that?
Yeah, of course. So if they're running through a questionnaire and they find out that the individual is actually already represented, how would we use the Boolean to actually just end the questionnaire at that point?
Oh, perfect. Yeah. So in order to end the questionnaire, we can involve some CQC rules. So if it is true, then we can connect all of those so that it ends the questionnaire. And we're going to see that in just a moment. And yeah, definitely let me know if that answered your question. If not, I can also show it live in just a moment. All right, so we've got our opening, next of kin. We have our accident, injuries, closing, schedule an investigator, DocuSign, request a paper packet. Again, just examples. Now I'm going to go ahead and just break down to the right this information, right? So depending on the node, you're going to have some options to add questions and to set up navigation rules and all that good stuff. But let me just break down what all this means. So we have our check CQC, which again I mentioned is the qualifying criteria, the case qualified criteria. So basically this setting, if you check it, it will check every CQC rule in your org when the users press next on that node or section. CQC works with questionnaires to help you qualify cases at the intake stage, right? We are going to get more into this in just a second, but just so you understand, if you do create a CQC rule, make sure that you come back and check it on the corresponding node. Otherwise, it will not fire and it won't apply, right? So especially if you have certain criteria that qualifies or rejects a case, make sure that you have that on. Right underneath it, you have past navigation back to previous node. This is essentially, it means that the questionnaire will use the navigation logic from the node the user was on prior to the current node, right? So prior to the node with that option checked. This occurs when no navigation rules from the current node are triggered. So think of it as, think of this like setting as a driveway, right? To turn around when you hit a dead end. You've arrived at a destination and need to turn around to take a different route. So in questionnaires, you've arrived at a questionnaire node to gather additional information, and now you need to turn around to navigate to a different questionnaire. So again, it's just kind of like a little shortcut you can use, but otherwise it's not, past navigation back to previous node is not really needed, okay? Now just looking at the bottom section here for the actual questions, I'm just going to annotate right here. So in order to do that, to add your questions, you can click on the plus sign right here, and you can see it's already saying, okay, select your option. So this is going to show you all the questions that you have in your org, right? You can scroll to select, or you can just begin typing to select your the question, right? So an example I'm going to do, are you currently represented by an attorney for this? So I selected my question here. Right next to that is your description. Think of this as help text to guide users through the questionnaire, right? Maybe your question's a little confusing, or maybe you want to make sure that they're asking it the right way or anything like that. You can put it in there, and that's what the end user will see underneath the question, okay? And so I guess an example would be, to explain to them, I just put, has the client ever signed any legal document for the same case or situation, so they understand, because sometimes, clients, they don't know what they've signed or remember what they've signed. So let's see, after that, you have mapping right here. So, you can map the answer to the question to a specific field on the intake. Basically, the drop-down options change based on the question. And we'll see that in just a little bit here. But right next to that, you have required. So essentially, you can make this question required to continue navigating the questionnaire, right? So users must answer required questions before navigating to the next node of the questionnaire. Basically, it won't allow them until they answer it, right? It's going to say, hey, nope, you can't move forward. You have to answer this question first. So depending on how important that question is, or based on the criteria, you can make it required or not, right? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just, because we're just talking about the question sections for right now, I'm just going to add a couple more. first name? What's your last name? So you guys can see how this works. We'll do phone number. We'll do and again, you can type or scroll. Email. Ooh. Okay, looks like I need a, that's probably one I have to create. Okay, so this is good. So you've added your questions. You can see I'm adding questions, but if you notice, if I leave this one blank right here, I'm gonna get an error, and I'm gonna showcase that right now because it wants to make sure that you're filling out everything. So if you leave something, so you can see that I just got an error. It says questionnaire cannot be saved. Please check criteria or empty questions. This is good to know because let's just say you have 20 nodes here. And you're like, oh no, I don't know where it could be. You know, that's, you probably left a question blank. So you can just delete that, just like that. All right. So we'll go ahead and we'll add another question here to what is your relationship? We'll do accident. We'll do what date did the, and just so you can see what's involved, right? Like, especially if you have so many nodes, so many questions, you know, what it takes, but it's again, very easy. I can find what I'm looking for. And if it's not there, I know I can go quickly and create it in my questions tab, right? If I thought I made a question like I did with the email there. Did you seek medical help? We'll do, actually, we'll do, let's delete that. So we'll do what day did the accident occur? We'll do, let me delete this here. We'll do maybe describe the accident happened. There we go. Okay, let's do injuries here. Can you please describe your injuries? Did you seek? And the reason I'm adding all this is because once we see it finally created, we're going to see all of this kind of come together, right? So did you seek, okay, name of hospital. We'll do for closing, sign up. For schedule an investigator. Time, and we're almost done with this part, I promise. We'll do, let's see, will the client be signing the DocuSign? We'll do for paper packet, well, I won't. Right. All right, and then we'll save here. Always make sure you get that green banner because you know that you added everything as you should have. All right, perfect. So we've added all our questions. Let's go ahead and move on to mapping fields. So field mapping is the process of automatically populating a field with a value or updating a field to a new value. So when you're adding questions to questionnaires, you can map a question's answer to a specific field on the record. You know, so the answer auto-populates the selected field into the mapping dropdown. So for example, you know, if your question is, when did this automobile accident occur? And the answer type, when we created the question, is date and time, then you can map this question to the incident date field, okay? And again, you can do the mapping in CQC. You can do it in, like I mentioned, the date, time, and fields, and in questionnaires itself. So let's take a look at that. So in opening, I have a couple options here that I could probably map, like, you know, what is your first name, right? I can go ahead and type in first name, or I could scroll, but you can see I want it to map to my intake here. And definitely pay attention to that because you have your matter, you have your referral, you have a couple of different records, but I want to map it to my intake, first name there, so I can do that very easy. Last name, same deal. I can make them required if needed, right? For the phone, I can do the same thing. Intake phone here, because again, it is a field type that exists already. And I can make it required. Let's see where else I can do this. Maybe what day did the accident occur? Right, I can map that to the incident date, like we mentioned. I can make it required. Okay, so again, that's mapping. You can do that very easily. I'm going to save my actions here. All right, and again, very quickly, that was an example of how you can map those questions. Moving on to case qualifying criteria, or like we like to call it, CQC. So CQC works with questionnaires to help you qualify cases at the intake stage, right? It's composed of rules that you set in order to change your records fields or check a field value. So the rules can fire based on answers provided in a questionnaire or field values, right? So the rules will essentially evaluate question answers every time a user presses next within the questionnaire when, remember, as I showed you, that little check CQC box is checked or not, okay? So again, when the user selects a particular answer, the CQC rule fires and makes any changes you set to the record. And there are two types of CQC, any field value on the intake record, any question answer on the questionnaire, all right? And we're gonna go ahead and I'm gonna show you what that looks like. So again, I'm in my Litify setup, so I can just go over here to case qualify criteria and pull that up. Same deal, you might have some already created. I had two that I already created, but we're gonna create one together here. So I'm gonna click on new. Perfect. And the first step is naming your CQC, right? That's the first deal. I'm going to go ahead and call this one already represented because I know which one I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about that question. Are you currently represented by an attorney for this matter? I want to create a rule that will automatically just turn it down, reject it if the answer to that question is a specific answer. So we'll see that in just a second. So I've got my name. I'm going to put the message. Now this section for message, this is what the end user is going to see. So whatever you type here, that's what they'll see when they're going through the questionnaire. So I guess, for example, we'll do, the message will be, this case has been turned down, but I'm also going to go ahead and add it. I'm going to add a reason for why this is being turned down, just for them to know, right? So the PC or potential client is already represented for this matter, and that's why we're turning it down. Right underneath that, you do want to make sure that if you have an active questionnaire, that you mark this CQC as active. If you don't, it won't fire and it won't apply. Okay, so that's important to note. Right below that, we're going to do our rules here. So rules, these fields determine the rule or conditions for the action. So I'm going to go ahead and, as I mentioned, are you currently being represented? That's where this is the question that I want to apply to. So we'll do equals and we'll say yes. So again, if the end user is going through the questionnaire, they ask this question to the potential client, the client says yes, you know, we want it to reject, we want it to be turned down, and that's what this is doing. When you add your question, do make sure that you click on add. If you don't, and then you click save, it'll just remove this and you'll think that, oh, I did it, but you didn't add it. So make sure you click add, and that's how you know it's been added there successfully. Okay. Next, we're going to do our mapping. So this section allows you to update fields on the intake, right? So for this example, because I keep saying it, I want this to reject, so or to be turned down. So I'm going to go ahead and look for my intake status here, and my value, because I keep saying it, is going to be turned down. But you can see all the other you know, options that you can do for that intake. But for me, I want it to be turned down or rejected. I'm going to go ahead and add that right here. It's been added. And you know, I can even do there is a, you can do turn down reason, which is a field in the intake. So that way it'll actually explain. So example for this one, we can do already represented. So not only is it going to update the intake to reflect a turn down status, it'll even go even further and let you know, hey, the reason why we turned it down is because it's already represented. And they can see that in the details section. And we'll take a look at that in just a bit. But I can get all that done. I can add it. I can save it. Boom. My CQC is active. It's created. It's associated with that question. I'm good to go. Let's see if we can do one more. We have already represented, next of kin. We have no injuries. Let's do authority. Let's just do one more. So this will be authority and the message again. Case is turned down, and the reason we're going to say here is that the caller does not have legal authority in this case, and then it's giving instruction to the end user to communicate to the client. Please have the injured party or next of kin call back to see if they meet criteria for this matter or case, right? It's active. I'm going to select my question. Do you have legal authority? We'll say equals no. We'll add it. We will map it to the status. Turn down. And again, if you wanted to put a reason, you could, but I'll just do that for now. That will save. Perfect. So I have a couple CQC rules set up, right? I have authority on this case already represented. Just to kind of show you what next of kin was that I created. This is another, depending on the outcome of the question, then it would be turned down. So what is your relationship to the client or injured party? If it equals friend or other relative, it's going to reject that, right? Because that's not usually friends or other relatives usually don't have authority on that case. So that's just an example. And then we do have for no injuries. So if when they're going through the intake or through the questionnaire, if the client didn't have any injuries, then it's also going to reject it, right? All right. Let's see here. I do want to point out another one, and this was a question that came through that a client had asked, and the question was, is it possible to have a CQC fire and then actually continue to the next node or section? So you can see the CQCs that I'm creating, they're all to be rejected, right? They're all to be turned down. But they wanted to know if it's possible to do a CQC that will allow you to, it'll display the message, but then allow you to continue asking additional questions. And the answer is, yeah, you can. So I do want to showcase that, how you can do that. And we're going to use this example for serious injury here. And I will show you what this is updating in just a moment. So serious injury alert, right? The serious injury checkbox field has been updated on the intake. Please proceed to the next, we'll say next set of questions. It's active. Okay, I'm going to set a, can you please describe injuries? We'll say equals. I'm just going to type in some random injuries here. And of course, the end user would know, right? Maybe they'll have a list depending on their SOPs, but we'll do loss of limb, ouch, loss of, these are just some of the things that I've seen in my experience. If I can spell, okay, so we'll add those, we'll add. And then what we're gonna do here is we're gonna map it to the serious injury checkbox, and we're gonna say true, and we're gonna add that. So again, what we're saying here is that once the, and we'll showcase this, but once the end user is going through and they're collecting information, if broken leg, loss of limb, or loss of pregnancy is mentioned anywhere in the questionnaire, what that's going to do is it's going to automatically update the details section of the intake where serious injury is checked. And that's good for, right, if it's like a gold case and you have to do additional things on the back end, that's how you would do it. So that's just the first step, right? So we'll say yes, we'll save, everything's been added. Now, if you guys remember, we were creating all these CQC rules, but we have to make sure that we checked the CQC box in the node. So let's go do that really quick. So we'll go to our questionnaires, we'll go to the accident here. All right, so we know that we did a couple, right? So we did, are you currently being represented by an attorney? So we want to make sure that we check that CQC. Let's see, we did, what is your relationship? That was a CQC, so we want to make sure we check it. What else did we do? We did any injuries, right? We did that one. Now, because we, and this is where this is going to kind of get a little bit where you can continue to the next node. So if you remember for this question right here, oh, actually, I'm sorry. We said we describe. Let's see, we'll check here. Injuries, actually, yes. Okay, injuries. All right, so check CQC. Can you please describe the injury? So if they mention broken leg, loss of limb, loss of pregnancy, this is where you could continue with a CQC rule by specifying which node you want it to go to. So I have my rule in place, but I don't want it to end because with CQC rules, normally the questionnaire will end, right? So I can select the questionnaire and I can select which node I want it to go to. So for example, if they mention all that, they continue answering, they can continue to the questionnaire by gathering more information. We'll do closing and then save. So that's just a kind of a workaround if you wanted to use CQC that way. But otherwise, most likely CQC is used to turn down a questionnaire. All right. Let's see here. So our very last one we're going to be talking about is navigation and navigation rules. So questionnaire navigation rules allow you to create simple or complex criteria for navigating from one node on a questionnaire to any node on the current questionnaire, or even a different questionnaire. So you can see this example right here for navigation, right? Which questionnaire are we navigating to? Well, if there's just one, then there's just one. But maybe you have a dedicated closing questionnaire. Maybe you have a referral questionnaire, right? You can select which questionnaire you want to navigate to. So it doesn't have to be the same questionnaire, the same nodes, right? It could be an entirely different questionnaire. Next is which node are we going to? Specifically, which node are we going to in this questionnaire? Or maybe which node are we going to in another questionnaire? We need to identify that. And the third is there a rule depending on the answer? Now, rules are optional, actually. You don't have to set a rule, but you do have to set the navigation. And we'll see that in just a moment. But something else I do want to point out is that if the top navigation rule triggers first, then the questionnaire does not evaluate the remaining rules. So you want to make sure that you build your navigation with that in mind. Right? So like example, if I'm saying, I want it to go to the accident node, but then I have a bunch of other rules that I want to apply before it goes to the accident, it's most likely not going to fire because my first rule is saying, hey, I want you to go to the accident node, right? It's not looking at the ones below that. So just keep that in mind. So let's go ahead and create some, beginning with the question here. So we have our opening, and you can see right here at the bottom, I don't have any navigation, right? So if I were to use this questionnaire, nothing would happen. It would just end it because I have no navigation in place. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and say we're going to select the only questionnaire I have available, which is the automobile accident. This is the opening node, right? You guys can see that here. This is the opening node. Where do I want it to go after opening, right? Well, I want it to go to accident because that's the next set. That's what I want. So I can go ahead and choose that. Now I want to add a rule. So I want to apply, do you have legal authority? In this case, I can just do it just like that. I can say equals yes. So what I'm saying is, if when they answer this question, if they say yes, it's going to take them to the accident node. If they say no, well, it's going to reroute them somewhere else. And where are they going? Well, we have a CQC in place, so that's where they'll be going, right? So you can see how it all starts to tie together. So I'm going to go ahead and let's see. So I've added that rule, but then I'm going to go ahead and do another one. You can see that I put my rule first before my final navigation. So I'm going to do next of kin. And I'm not adding a rule because I'm saying if it's anything else, then we're going to next of kin. Okay, so I'm going to hit save here. All right, so I got my first navigation here. Now I'm going to go ahead and move over to next of kin. Same deal. I'm going to set my navigation. I'm going to choose my questionnaire. I'm going to choose the node that I want. And I'm going to set a rule here. What is the relationship to the... And for this, I'm going to do not equals. And we're going to do friend or other relative. So again, I'm saying if it's any of the answers other than friend or relative, it's going to go to the accident. If it's friend or relative, we know we have a CQC that's going to fire and that's going to reject this. So let's do accident. We'll say navigate to injuries. And we don't need a rule. We just know that after this information is obtained, we'll go ahead and navigate over to injuries. For injuries, we'll do, once they obtain all this information, the CQC is checked, we'll go ahead and go over to closing. Schedule an investigator, or actually for closing, we will do, let's see here. For the node, we will do investigator. And for this, we're going to have to add a couple rules here. So we'll do sign up. And we'll say equals investigator. So if the answer is investigator, it's going to take them to the investigator node. And I'm going to do the same thing for paper packet and DocuSign. And last one, paper packet. All right, so again, I'm essentially, and this is, I've ended my questionnaire, but it doesn't have to end here. Obviously, it depends on how you build it. But for me, I'm ending it here. So it could end at schedule an investigator. It could end at send DocuSign, because think about it. If it ends at schedule an investigator, that's the action that the end user is going to do. They're going to schedule an investigator and then end the call. If it's DocuSign, they're going to send out the document, get it signed, end the call. If it's request a paper packet, they've sent out that request for that paper packet and end the call. So I don't need to do anything else here. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and click save. And finally, we'll do request paper packet. We can do here, let's see. Well, maybe we'll do DocuSign actually. We'll do, let's do one here, accident. Let's see. So we'll do paper packet. And we'll say, will the client be signing the DocuSign? We'll say no. So this is just saying basically, if we're at the DocuSign node, but they still don't want to sign it, then we can reroute to the paper packet node so we can get that paper packet sent out. And then we will save. All right, so we've done a lot. And I know maybe it was a little too quick, but definitely you can rewatch the video. You have your resources that I'm going to go over in just a second. But let's talk about everything that we did, right? We created questions. We created case qualifying criteria. We created our actual questionnaire. We've made it active. We made it available. We created different nodes. We applied those CQC rules. We've added some descriptions maybe. We've mapped it. We've made it required. Added the navigation. We added some navigation rules, right? And again, we can go through all of that. We can see that there. So now let's see if this thing works, right? Let's see it live. So let me go ahead and, yep, it's all saved. I'm going to go ahead and navigate over to Litify here. And I'm going to go over to my intakes. Perfect. I'm gonna, yeah, we'll just go to random here, Meredith Palmer. For those of you that are fans of The Office, that is Miss Palmer there. All right. That. Actually, I see here, I'm gonna uncheck this real quick, but this is what I was talking about. We created that CQC rule so that it could update this field here. Or we've added that turn down reason so that it could update here once it was fired, right? So I'm going to go to my questionnaire. I'm going to go ahead and select it. You can also make this questionnaire the default, and I can show you how to do that. But otherwise, you know, they'll have a pick list to go through all the questionnaires. But I'll just add that right here. And so we can see, right? These are the questions that we made. There's some help text on the bottom for the end user. This is the label of it. So are you currently being represented by an attorney? I will say, I'm going to say yes, just to show you what happens, right? So if I click next, boom, I got my CQC rule that fired. This case has been turned down. Reason the PC is already represented for this matter. And of course, the status right up here has also been updated. Okay, so we can see that it works, but I'm just going to go back and change my answer to no. You can see that the mapping is working great, right? So when we first, maybe the end user already obtained that information, it mapped it, we didn't have to re-enter in that information. These are all required, so that's good. We can click on next. Takes us to, you know, what is your relationship? Depending on what the relationship is, we know that if we select friend or other relative, what's going to happen? It's gonna reject. You got it, right? That's our CQC firing there. But if I say spouse, I can go ahead and continue, enter in my information. We'll just do test, yes. If I were to say no, you guys remember we have a CQC rule for this. If I say no, it's gonna reject it because there are no injuries. But I'm just gonna say yes. We can continue. Can you please describe? This is that one we did where if they mention specific injuries, like example, broken leg, that we know that CQC is going to fire, but it's still going to allow me to continue, right? So test hospital, I'll click next here. And you can see serious injury alert. The serious injury checkbox field has been updated on the intake. Please proceed to the next set of questions. So again, where normally it would usually end it and reject the intake, it's going to allow the end user to continue. Okay, so we can click next. And you can go ahead and continue grabbing those specific questions. All right, let's see here. So now I'm going to jump over just to, again, I just wanted to show you how what we did together actually worked. There are just so many options. There's so many, you know, ways that you can customize questionnaires. And I just want to cover some resources. So if you're not already familiar, right, we have our Litify Learning Hub. So it's our e-learning platform where they have courses geared towards end users, admins, but it's definitely a good starting point to familiarize yourself with Litify if you haven't already. And again, something to note, please keep in mind that these courses were created using Litify's out-of-the-box setup. So it's not going to look identical to to your org, right? You also have the Litify community. It's a space for Litify admins to connect with and collaborate alongside Litify employees. This is where our technical documentation lives, along with different forums to chat with other Litify admins. So definitely, you all should be registered to that. And then of course, Trailhead is great for many things, but if you want to kind of get more familiar with page layouts, permission sets, object field sets, maybe renaming some, then that's what that's good for. All right, and so that brings us to any questions. I know we're literally a minute away from 3, but please, if you have any questions, drop it in the chat or throw your hand up, whatever you want. I can take you off mute. But if you don't have any questions, then I do want to thank you guys so much for joining. Keep in mind that Shaylee will share this recording to everyone.